I don't know if you know, but you're the first IBNS International Chapter guest, so it's a great honor to have you, and I'm sure everyone will be very grateful for your interview. People will enjoy it, I'm sure.
I'm sure too, and I'm also delighted that I didn't know that I was the first one.
Yes, you're the first one. So for those that do not know, this is Rezwan Razack. He definitely doesn't need an introduction in IBNS. He's very well known, and he is an author of he's an author of One Rupee 100 Years book, and he's co-author of Revised Catalog of Standard Indian Paper Money. He is also co-founder of Prestige Estates Project and a managing director of Prestige Group. He is helping to coordinate Terry Fox Run, which is fundraising event for AIDS of cancer research in Bangalore. And Rezwan, we have you here. Thank you very much for dedicating your time, and I hope we can speak about the last thing, which you're an avid collector of Indian paper money.
Thank you for having me, Arnas. It's also an honor for me to do this interview. So
how did it all begin? I know it is somehow related to your relatives, the collection of Indian paper money, and it's quite a story. I actually read it, and I will copy it in the description. It's very interesting. So maybe you could take us through that.
See, the thing was, for any hobby to germinate, there has to be a reason. Everyone has a reason. My reason was very different. When we were children, we were given, and when I say children and old enough, my grandparents were traders by profession. They had daily collection of money that used to be done in the sales, whatever sales they did.
International trades or India trades?
Come again?
Was it international trades or India trades? Trades in India?
No, it is India trade locally.
India. So that's why the big collection of India. They used to have so much money then, or at least paper money.
No, but then when you said traders, there were traders doing trading in many things, and most of those were cash collections. In those days, I think they didn't believe in banking their money, because most of the time in those days, a lot of these banks would bust. So they would bring the money and keep it at home in a safe. So that was the bank. And the money went to the bank only if they had to retire hundi, because those days hundi was a promissory note to money to pay.
I believe I've seen some of those hundi notes. Yeah. They're very,
So, or if they have issued some check, for the check to be honored, they would then go and deposit that much money. Of course, that money was, we didn't physically touch it. It was a small cloth bag that was there, in which the money was there, and tied with a little, like a rope. And we were given the honor to go and place it inside the safe. So as children, you're inquisitive. You want to know what else is in the safe. There are many things. One of the things that came out of the safe was some British India money, which had the portrait of George VI. And also it was Reserve Bank of India. But what was intriguing was, it said Pakistan money, payment refused.
Yes.
No one had an answer. No one had an answer how it was Reserve Bank of India and how it became Pakistan money, and why payment was refused. No one knew. No doubt that before independence, we were all using the British India money. It's only much later I figured out that the British India money, they overprinted Government of Pakistan and Hukumat-e-Pakistan in English. In the interim period, until such time the Pakistan government or the state bank got their own money. So in the search of these answers, that got me interested. And finally, I think when I was in class 10, standard 10 or grade 10, Then I said, can I have these? He said, okay, you keep it because anyway, it's no use to me. And that was also way back in 1970. So it's now 50 plus 1 years. So that was, there were also other British India notes that were there along with these. So all these I inherited because of my interest.
That's how the collection started.
And it got germinated further because you tend to, when I went to there's some hill station called Ooty, which is a 6-hour drive from where I stay in Bangalore. And my uncle in his drawer had some British India, the 1 rupee, the 2.5 rupees. He's seeing my enthusiasm. I asked him, these are of no use to me. I'm doing some collection. Can I have them? He said, you keep it. So I got a starter kit.
That is some starter kit for sure. One thing that was very interesting to me about Pakistan or Reserve Bank of India, money that was used in Pakistan, I saw the overprint and I said, how is that even possible? This is Reserve Bank of India. Then I had to ask my fellow colleagues who collect Indian banknotes, and he told me. And is it by the prefix that you distinguish them?
That's right. So what really happened was why it was refused, the payment was refused for that money was that certain prefix and serial numbers were confined for the use which were overprinted. People move from one country to another during the partition. Some have come back with that money in their pocket, and which can't be used here because it's not legal tender in India, and neither can they go back. So as humans, you have to be clever. So the best thing is to score off the overprint. So the overprint was taken off, and you can't see it. Then it looks like a normal. Maybe it has circulated until finally it's reached the bank. Once it's reached the bank has said. So my granddad was the unfortunate person not to have got his money in cash. And maybe I was fortunate because of that, I got into collecting Indian paper money. I wouldn't have otherwise.
One of my speculations was maybe also to exploit the differences in economies. I thought maybe there was a price difference, and I thought you could just take money from India or Pakistan and spend it in India, and maybe there was some price difference, but I'm not sure if that would stand.
To that, I'll tell you, there was such a situation, but that happened much later Indian money was used in the Gulf, including British India money, and even Republic India money or independent India money was used in the Gulf. So people did exactly what you said. They would take money from here because it was legal tender there, and they were using that same money for their day-to-day transaction, and they would buy gold. And bring the gold to India, smuggle it into sell it, collect the money again, and I take that money back and do this. So the government got wise. And that's one of the reasons why that in 1959, where you have the Persian Gulf money, which was identical to the Indian money, only difference was that the color was different. And there is the only difference again on the obverse is it says payable in Bombay, which means that for anyone from the Gulf or the banks from the Gulf, if they had to encash, they had to encash it in Reserve Bank of India, Bombay alone. The Persian Gulf was a green color. What was used in India was a purple one.
That is one of those interesting things in development of financial history in general, how these things actually flew around, and you had all these different synergies between countries and how it all evolved. So that's one of the interesting things, and I hope so that also general public will be more interested in that, because of course banknotes represent history, which is one of the things that IBNS is doing to educate people and tell them about it. And for you spend so much time in that, so you have such a profound knowledge here that almost no other person would have because of your interest, and it's great that you can share it. Absolutely.
No, One more thing I'll add to what he said was the Reserve Bank of India, since you brought that topic up, was the only federal bank in the world to issue notes for two countries in a civilian rule. The other country that it issued notes was for Burma,
Okay.
which, yeah, because the Reserve Bank of India were also managing the monetary affairs of Burma till 1946,
Okay.
when they were asked to leave. And they had an issue, what we call them as peacock notes.
Okay.
When the British were there, before the Japanese walked in, we had what we call the George V and George V notes, which were overprinted for legal tender in Burma only. Then, after the Japanese left, the Burmese were very agitated about using overprinted notes. So they got a note printed specifically for the Burmese.
The Burmese. Wow. And how did the first book came? So you wrote One Rupee 100 Years. How did that came about?
No, let me go to the first book first. The one that everyone refers to, which is the revised standard guide to Indian paper money. This happened in the year 2012. But prior to 2012, I needed to learn about this because that inquisitiveness or learning, which was the answers that we didn't know, were not available on the net or anywhere. Unlike now, where a lot more information has been fed in. If you type, Google answers you, but in those days there were no answers. So that made me travel. One of the places that I did travel and spend a lot of time was at the British Library. British Library has what they call as the India Office records. They also maintain the records of all the transactions that took place from the time the Crown took over in 1857 from the East India Company till they left in 1947. For 90 years, records are there. They do have a parallel record in India as well, but it's not accessible to us for some reason. So when I went there, there were many things that we were able to access from the library. So I became a student. So once you became a student, I used to reach there in the morning when the museum opens at 9 and there till maybe 5:36 till we were kicked out. Because those had to be under invigilation. It can't be that they're giving you the file because some do contain real notes as well, apart from the letters. So it is not available to anyone when you apply and get it. So you have to go by appointment and someone is there. There is a camera recording you, etc., etc. So once this learning happened, now he said, okay, now you must put this into a book. Another reason for the book is that the collection became so much that there were also requests from people to say, can we see them? And if someone comes, you need to spend anywhere between 2 hours to 6 hours because they see it, they haven't seen it, they get interested. So I thought the best way to show off the Indian monetary or the Indian money trail is to do a book with some nice pictures. Then this book became real. There were also, I have some very nice stories about, I even traveled to Portugal because Portuguese were here in India for they colonized India and parts of Goa also were under the Portuguese rule. So I met a gentleman in a airport in the lobby, and he happened to be the consul general for Sri Lanka, Portuguese gentleman. I told him that I write articles as well. I've written an article which has appeared in the IBNS magazine, and he said I must read it. In the where we were sitting in the airport, there was a computer. So we pulled out the computer because in those days, our phones didn't have Wi-Fi. So he saw it, he read it, and he said, he gave me his card. He said, email me, and I'm going to share this information. It's very well written article. In fact, I think that I got a Philipson award also for the best written article on this.
Oh, wow.
Portuguese India article, yes. And about a month later, I got a mail from him saying that the governor of Portugal wants to meet you and is happy to show you the archives. So I said, once you have this invitation, I should go. So I did go to Lisbon, because it is now Bank of Portugal. There, it was month of August, peak summer, and I didn't know that, most Europeans, take off in August. That's their annual vacation, and it was very hot as well. So I was in my shorts and t-shirt, and I went in. They were expecting me, but I didn't know that the governor of Portugal, the Bank of Portugal, would receive me. There were two gentlemen who came fully suited. I said, I'm very sorry that I'm in. No, we understand it's holiday period and you're on vacation. And the thing was that they were quite startled to see the amount of notes that I had in my collection and possession and the knowledge that I had. He said that everything that is here is at your disposal. They had a gentleman who was with me, they dedicated a gentleman to show whatever they had. So I spent a day there. There was nothing new that I could get. But what was most interesting and the information that I got was, all these years we couldn't decipher the signatories on the note.
Okay.
Yeah. If you see the previous books, it was described as VG1 or Vice Governor 1 or Administrator 1, Administrator 2. There was no name to the sign. The person that I met was very intelligent, and he said, this information I can get you, but give me some time. And that's how the information and all the names are listed now, because they were authenticated by the archives from Bank of Portugal. So even though I couldn't get anything, but getting the signatories identified against each note was the biggest achievement, I thought.
That adds so much to the value if you know who found it. And then you, of course, know which ones are rare and then which ones are not, recurring by the name, which is a great thing.
That's right.
So the book is a very interesting book, and we use it as a standard catalog at SPINK to refer to the Indian paper money. One of my favorite stories is the Hyderabad note that was sunk in a ship. So maybe you can tell more about that. It's a very interesting story to me. About
the Hyderabad which note?
I think it's the SS Egypt ship.
Oh, the sea sunk note.
Yeah.
See, what happened was when it didn't sink off Egypt. The name of the ship was SS Egypt.
Yes.
Which carried not only the Hyderabad notes, it also carried 1 million pounds of gold in that time, which today is worth 200 million pounds.
Wow.
That was being shipped from London to India. Now, what happened was, I think there was the ship sank due to bad weather or whatever, very close to UK itself. But unfortunate part was that it went in so deep that there was no human who could go the 400 fathoms below the sea. So eventually, I think the insurance company paid the shippers the money, and then they appointed some people to recover. There were many people who tried this salvage process. I think 12 years later, this company that Artiglio was the name of the company that finally they got in, and they were able to recover the gold. In the process of recovering gold, they found paper money, and that was not known to them. So when they were bringing the money up, they were very excited that we got gold, we also got cash. But they didn't know that the cash, those were unsigned notes. None of those notes were signed, because normally what would happen is, when the notes got printed in England, they would get signed in India for the sake of security. So the thing was, even there was a deal that the Hyderabad government did not want trouble. So they from the salvage guys, they paid some money and bought up all the notes, barring 18,000, which is what you'll be seeing floating around, comprising of all the denominations put together, which is 5, 10, and 100.
And it's quite well described in your book, which I liked a lot. I actually enjoyed so much reading about it. It's very well mentioned in your book and well recorded. So that's the beauty of the book, as you say. It takes around 2 to 6 hours to explain everyone what was in your notes. So the book was a very good option to save some time.
There are a lot of information. There is a book also called Egypt's Gold. But what is written in the book is very concise and to the point, pertaining to the note itself. You also asked me about the book on 100 rupees.
Yes.
It's called One Rupee, 100 Years. Most people didn't know that, the lowest denomination until 1871 was 10. That was the lowest denomination, 10 rupees. Okay. 1879, 1871, they brought in 5 rupees. Now, thinking now, my mind is working. Now, if it's 1871, that means we are 150 years since the birth of 5 rupees. I should write a book on 5 rupees now.
Yes, definitely.
So, 1917 was the first time that India saw a denomination of 1 rupee, which was the lowest denomination. Because in those days, money was not banknotes were not used as currency. They were used as banknotes. That's why they used to be called banknotes and not currency. They were not fiat money. So people in India still believed in silver or gold, the specie only. Anyway, because of the shortage of silver that happened, they needed to do a very quick thing of bringing down the note value or bringing a denomination of 1 rupee. And not only that, they also had to, because the silver was gone, the First World War was in place. So November 1917 was when the note got issued. So 1st November 1917 is when the book was released, 100 years later. So the book has the journey of the 1 rupee from 1917 till 2017. All types of 1 rupee that were issued.
Yes. Well, also, you're a founder of a museum, and maybe you could take us through that. And if most of your collection or all of your collection, or at least the keynotes, are displayed in the museum.
What I'll do, Arnas, is that I'll show you a few images and I'll talk you through them. Then I'll show you a 2 or 3 minute video of the museum for people also to see. It's very concise. Give me a second. I'll share my. I'm just trying to open the. Yeah, there you go. It's open. Yeah, I'm sharing. Can you see it?
I cannot see it at the moment.
Can you see the screen?
No.
Okay, let me share it. Oh, yeah, I have to click.
I can see it now. Rezwan.
You can?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now you can see?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. I'm sharing some images of the notes that are displayed at the museum. This is a Bank of Hindustan 8 rupees note. You know, the denomination 8 is very odd. The reason being that 16 rupees was 1 gold mohar. So
Okay.
everything was considered. So in reality, this meant that this was a half a gold mohar. 1 gold mohar weighed 11.66 grams, and 8 rupees was half a gold mohar, which weighed 5.83 grams. So this note was exchanged either for 8 rupees or half a gold mohar. This denomination was not known till very recently when I think one came. I think one came in SPINK auction and one was some other auction in UK.
Yes, yes, it's very interesting story how it was found as well.
I always like this note, even though it has no character. The reason being it is a 250 Bank of Bengal note. And why it's important is this is the oldest surviving note, issued note of Indian paper money. This is dated 3rd September 1812. So it's more than 200 years old and an issued note signed. And if you see, there is a portion that is cut, that is the signature that is cut. Obviously, when the payment was made, the signature was cut saying that, I have handed over the 250 rupees to the bearer who brought it.
Did have to be such a big amount of money at the time. Unbelievable.
Okay, just to make this talk interesting, 250 rupees is 16 gold mohar about. And if you multiply 16 gold mohar by 12, is nearly 300 grams of gold.
Wow.
Which in today's market could be, how many pounds is that now? What, lakh and 20?
About 7, it's about 0.7, I would assume. It's
Yes.
almost a pound.
So that's the value of the gold. So you can easily make out the value by the intrinsic value of the gold, because we had a conversion in those days that 16 rupees silver coin, 16 silver coin of equal weight gave you 1 gold mohar of equal weight.
I see.
That was the rate of conversion in those days.
And that would be 12 gold mohar.
Gold mohar, yes.
5,000.
There are very few 5,000 rupee notes. There are only 2, but never seen them in an issued note. This is a commercial bank, 5,000, and it's a uniface note.
That was probably used in between corporations. I would assume people wouldn't hold such a big amount of money.
Absolutely. This was between banks and maybe the business houses. Or also there is maybe another reason was that if they wanted to ship money from one, like what you did was you gave your silver or gold and got this piece of paper. Then we moved to the next city and then went back to the bank, gave this piece of paper and got back your silver or gold.
Yes, makes perfect sense.
So it was more like a demand draft, or a traveler's check. You can put it in that way. It was a traveler's check of those days. But this was never used by a common man at all.
Of course.
Similar one, which is the Bank of Bombay 10,000. Because there are more 10,000 in the early banks and the British India banks. They had denominations of 10,000, but they didn't have a denomination of 1 rupee. So obviously that goes to prove that these were used more as travelers' checks of between business houses and maybe the government. This is a very interesting note. Maybe the only surviving note of this. This is dated 9th October 1816. It is in a very unique denomination which calls it 2-star pagodas or 7 rupees. This was issued by the Madras Government Bank. And the reason why it is 7 rupees because 14 silver rupees gave you the star pagoda was the mohor of Madras presidency was valued at 14.
Okay.
So half of 14 was 7. And strangely, the Bombay presidency was 1:15. And then Bengal presidency was 1:16. Till the Gold Act came in 1835 and they said, but of course, the weight of that mohor was much less than that of the Calcutta, the Bengal mohor. Proportionately, it was less. That was 11.66. This was 10 point something.
Okay.
So 1835, they said no more of this confusion. Let's have the weight of gold and conversion to rupee. All have to be uniform.
Yeah.
And that's when, the word Sikka rupees went and companies rupees started.
I understand now, yes.
The 3 presidencies which the British ruled were the Calcutta, Bombay presidency and the Madras presidency. 1835, they got universalized in terms of weight and exchange rate. This is another one of those Madras presidency notes during the East India Company by it's the Madras Government Bank again. The one that I showed you, this is just 5 rupees. It doesn't talk of any pagodas. That means this has got a value which is not, and an issued note. The most important thing, it's an issued note, which you'll never ever see. I don't think there is another, I haven't seen an image of another one. It is something that it's a masterpiece for the museum as well.
Absolutely, and that's still before the standardizing.
And if you see the East India Company logo is also here. Yeah, coat of arms is there right on top.
One thing that is very fascinating is to preserve banknotes as such. It's almost 200 years for this 5 rupees, but it's still in a very presentable condition.
Yes, nearly yes, because if it's 24th May 1822, another year to go and it's 200 years old.
200 years.
This is a Bank of Madras. See, I've shown you the different presidency notes, which is the Calcutta, Bombay, now the Madras presidency. The reason why I brought this up was there were no known issued notes at all that were visible, because you would find them in specimens, but not in the issued notes. The only note that I ever saw was in lying at the British Museum, and I had to get permission to see it. And in fact, went there once just to draw the watermark, because I wanted this watermark to be put in the book.
Okay.
It's there listed in the book. And I flew from Bangalore to London, got the appointment, saw the note, held it, drew the watermark, and came back just before we. And now the story for this is that there was a fire in bank, one of these banks that were part of the Madras Bank, the historical Madras banks, which now are State Bank of India, Madras Bank became Imperial Bank and Imperial Bank became State Bank. A part of that building in which the State Bank was caught fire. So anyway, the fire was put off. 2 or 3 years later, that insurance story went on. And when the insurance finally agreed to pay, when they paid, the insurance takes away whatever is left in the area that was burned because they use that for salvage. I think they gave the salvage operations to somebody at some cost. In the bargain, they found these notes. This was about 5 years ago.
Wow.
And these were found by the labor who were clearing up this. So, maybe a few hundred of these notes came out. And it's lucky because, if it was, if that fire didn't happen, we wouldn't know. And if it was with State Bank, it wouldn't have been available to anyone to see or enjoy. This is a very interesting note. You'll be wondering what this note's got to do with India. Can you tell me, Arnas? It's a Bank of England, £5.
I wish I could. It's very interesting. I cannot see it.
Okay, I'll tell you what it
very
is.
interesting here.
Why it is there in the museum and why it's part of Indian paper money?
I can see. It says rupees, which is
yes. There's Government of India. There is 5 in between and rupee below, and it's also signed by Sir James Wilson. So this note has got wrongly printed on the India paper.
Wow. And that was done by Bank of England.
Yeah, because Bank of England printed Indian notes, India notes for long, they printed them. So obviously it must have been a trial because these 5 rupees were only as trials. They never came till 1871. Now, of course, the size was much smaller. This is the size of the 10 rupee which was there. They obviously have made a 5 rupee watermark paper, and since they didn't have a design, they've used the Bank of England 5 rupee, £5 note to print on this.
This is so fascinating. It's only worth to come to museum to see this. I would love to see that.
It's displayed there. You must come. Like this, there is one more note which is not displayed here, but it's there in my possession. It says Provincial Bank.
Okay, so provincial notes were printed on
the Provincial Bank, but it's one of those notes that were printed in England, but has got nothing to do with India at all, or even England, because it's just an imaginary bank. They were used. They were, I think, printers that were using that name to just print their, or maybe salesman sample or samples to go and show the guys that, how this is the quality of our printing. But the strange part is why it's put in, why I got fascinated is it's printed on Bank of Hindustan watermark paper.
Oh, one thing, Rezwan, thinking about it now, could it be because this paper substrate is very similar, and they just wanted to see how the ink would stick or the security?
Exactly. And also paper was made there locally in England itself by Bank of England only. So they would have also sold that paper. They have test printed it just to find out how it comes. But the fact is that the paper is Bank of Hindustan and the note is Provincial Bank. It doesn't say England, nothing. It doesn't say rupees, it doesn't say pound. But here this is very interesting. This Bank of England with the watermark of India is a very interesting note.
Indeed.
I chose this note to talk about because J.B. Taylor's signature. This is a 50 rupee uniface note. This J.B. Taylor signature is not seen on uniface, even though the governors after him, like Denning, McWaters, etc., their notes are there. But Taylor signature notes, the side notes, are not seen on uniface for some reason. Because anyway, these notes used to be printed in England and signed in India. whether it's by hand or by their methods of signing it. I'll tell you a very nice story. There are 5 Uniface notes. All are 500 rupees. If you see the dates of each of these notes, it starts with 11th May, 11th, 12th, then 13, 14, 15, 16. One date is not there. I can't read the date now. And that date is a Sunday.
Okay.
11th is a Sunday. Sorry, 11th is a Sunday. So 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. So 7th is a fun day. They are successive dates. But the strange part is that even though the dates are the same, each note is signed by a different governor or controller of currency.
Controller of currency.
Yeah, one's got Kelly, one's got Denning, one's got a CWC Carson, Bridgestoke, etc. But so the reason for this is that many people, for them, is a mystery that how is it possible that a controller of currency signs one on the 9th, 9th May of 1913. Next guy signs on the 10th. How is it that on successive dates did they have a trail of guys other than a Sunday? All 5 notes are one day behind each other and signed by different governors. The reason being that Uniface they had a method that till 100,000 notes were not printed. That was only to avoid too many prefixes. They continued the date. Okay, if this was 9th May 1913, till all 100,000 notes were not printed, the date didn't get changed. So the next note is dated 10th May. 10th May, for example. So that would have come much later, maybe even a year later, knowing the value of this note.
That explains so much. Wow, it's interesting that it's one day apart.
And also what happened is, if you see in some of these Uniface notes, the paper is manufactured in 1914 and dated 1912. You can't predate something that was born today. Yeah, and that is the reason why you got an answer that till 100,000 notes didn't get finished, the date was established. Even though the paper may have been made subsequently 1 year later, 2 years later.
The banknotes were issued. Yes, well, that is fascinating. That group is extraordinary.
That's why, to substantiate my answer also, the prefixes are SB7, SB8, SB9, SB10, SB11. Meaning to say that SB7, all 100,000 were printed and with the same date. Then they went to SB8 and so on and so forth.
Also interesting observation that SB7, the serial number starts with 8. The date starts with 8. And SB8, the date is 9, so it's 1 day behind. Just maybe coincidence, though.
It is. I just brought this up because this Uniface 10,000, big money in those days. Because unless somebody has lost its value or lost the note, for it to remain back and not in cash, must have been big money.
Very big. 10,000 must be so big.
Yeah. This again is an interesting Uniface booklet. When they decided to change the banknote in 1867 from the Victoria Portrait series to the Uniface underprint series, they needed to show off. So one of the things they did was to make a booklet, and the booklet had these notes, 9 notes, with all the subcircles. This too is there in the museum for all to see. But anyway, whatever I'm showing on now, it's there on the
in the museum.
Yeah, it's there at the museum.
so people can come in and have a look at it and
Yes,
read
of
about
course, of course. This is a portrait note, sorry, a pattern note of the 1 rupee, George V. And it was designed in 1920-21. And, it has a stylized GRI monogram in the center, in the reverse. And it has 8 languages as well. But this wasn't adopted.
it. Okay, and well, that's a beautiful design. I haven't seen this one particularly.
Beautiful, really very nice.
Very beautiful.
I purposely got this, even though this is 5 rupees and it's probably the not so scarce. The reason here is that the series started with, it's a brand new series which came up in 1922. It was released, signed by H. Denning. What is a mystery is there is no prefix A to F.
Oh wow.
A to G. There is no prefix. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 7 prefixes are not there. It's the first time they're issuing a 5 rupee, first time they're issuing a portrait note from the Uniface. And A to G prefix doesn't exist, but A prefix is there in the specimen note or whatever it's there, but not in issued notes. According to me, one of the reasons why I brought up, somebody might find an answer and might tell us that this could be it, because my assumption is that that these were printed with the name of McWaters, and before it got issued, I think he had left. So Jennings took over the comptroller. Maybe they didn't want to have a new note with the
Previous controller.
Controller. So they must have done some, maybe they hadn't printed maybe A was printed and not up to G. But whatever they printed, they must have not brought it out and then started with H again.
H again as a first series. That's very interesting. Certainly, there's something behind that.
And why I chose H1 as this 006. The first 10 notes were given to VIPs. So one of these notes was obviously given to some VIP, and then finally it has come out in some auction, most likely in SPINK, and has come to the museum. Stone Street is the guy. Stone Street. He was also very well known in the press where they printed stamps, etc. He was a consultant for the Bank of England for banknotes. So it's part of that presentation booklet that was given to him. The first note, I don't know if you know, the very first note goes to the King of England, whose portrait is there. Note number 1.
Yes, to the monarch of England.
Yes, goes to the monarch, yes. In this case, it's King of England.
Yes, of course.
This is a handmade essay. Some of these are there in the British Library as well.
And this hand essay, is it hand drawn or is it part?
Yeah, it's a handmade essay etched out of a copper plate. You can see the portrait which was etched out.
These are such a beautiful thing. It's a piece of art.
Yeah, these I think were contemplated, but then the war and this got deferred. They came, the portrait notes were considered in 1914, but then finally got issued 10 years later, 8 years later. This is a denomination that you can see a print, but unfortunately, this never got issued. 500 rupees. 500 was withdrawn in 1904, the Uniface 500, and then we got a 500 much later, 87.
What was that due to?
But this one was, see, you can see JB Taylor written here. It was made very similar to the 50 or the 100 rupees, but it remained. It's a progressive proof, but never got issued. I have the different stages of printing as well. Only one I've displayed, but the first stage, second stage, all the way it has progressed in the proofs that they are displayed there too. Just so that people get very overawed seeing 10,000 rupees, and this is a Karachi 10,000 rupees. Obviously, someone has not encashed it and lost their money.
That is a very big amount.
Yeah. This is a very interesting note. And if you see the corners, it says zero. This is unlike the zero notes that are floating around today, the euro note. This zero note is called a test note, because all the notes in those days were counted by hand. They were not counted by machine. So how did they know that the guy has not made a mistake? Because it's fatigue, you're doing the same job every day. So what they would do is pick a note. In this case, the note was H6741969. The real note was kept in the drawer of the guy who was the inspector, the chief inspector, or the master and chief inspector control. He would keep the real note and then slip this note in the packet.
Okay.
And the guy had to count. While counting, he had to bring this back, saying that, of course, it's very different. The watermark window here is on the right, and the portrait is on the left. In the real note, the watermark window is to the right, and the portrait is to the, watermark is to the left, and portrait is to the right. So once he took this back, he gave the note from his drawer, would take this, and then the process would start. The reverse of the note also says not payable. For some reason, it has escaped attention and it's gone and left the press. They say that, you can return this by post and the bank will reimburse you.
Surely that's
obviously someone's got it and not claimed a reimbursement, and thanks to that, they've lost 10 rupees, but then it's a valuable input that we've got and it's displayed at the museum.
Absolutely. Well, one thing to ask a more general thing. In India, we see that banknotes have pinholes. So could you tell us how they were stacked and what was the reason to actually stack them as such?
Yes, I think in this also there is a pinhole. I'm not sure. Check it. But yeah, pinholes because they used to punch the notes.
So they would stack it up.
They used to staple them.
Staple and then take out the staple and then distribute it.
Yes, every note till maybe 15 years ago, when they said that even defacing the note by writing on it is illegal.
Yes.
Till such time, all our notes used to be stapled in packets of 100. That is to avoid someone taking out one.
Of course.
Actually, I showed this to someone from UK who had come to the museum, and that is none other than Thomasina Smith. When the museum opened, she was here, and she said she hadn't seen something like this, because if you this was designed in 1936. It has the portrait of Edward VIII.
Okay.
Yes, Edward VIII, and it is actually I bought this many years back in an auction, not knowing that all this was there. Only reason why I bought this, if you can see the image to the right, it had the signature of a Governor Osborne Smith, whose signature doesn't appear on Indian banknotes. The reason being that he left in 1936. He was there. But when this design was contemplated for the Burma notes, you can see that it had the portrait of Edward VIII, and finally his portrait was removed, and then George VI appeared. Of course, everyone knows why he abdicated his throne, and he left, and so did So did Osborne Smith. He quit Reserve Bank in 1936. We also have a 10 rupee note, similar one, which was designed. You can see the color essay and the real issued note look very similar, except the numbers have gone to the center, and the sign now is only one. The pattern had two signatures: the governor and the deputy governor. Governor on the left and the deputy governor on the right. I was telling you about the Reserve Bank of India. Is the only federal bank in the world to issue currency for a civilian ruled country. This was the second issue of the peacock money, as they call it, because the peacock is in the middle. We refer it to peacock money because it is for Burma, it was used. But here, this is signed by Sridhi Deshmukh, and these are register prints. If you see, the reverse also has a different vignette of the temples rather than what was there in the one before this. This was what was there, the green one, and they proposed, I think, a newer one. But by the time when you say register print, that means it was all ready, set, designed, and ready to go. And the Reserve Bank were asked to leave. They were asked to leave India, quit, and go back home. So this remained unprinted. If you see the design intent of this is also a 10 rupees signed by C.D. Deshmukh. If you see the design intent of the designer, the elephants are there at the back. This vignette or picture was used in Indian notes subsequently. The Republic of India notes, this was used. So it didn't go for waste. And you will also see that the Reserve Bank of India, wherever there is a Reserve Bank headed note issued by the Reserve Bank, the logo is there on every single note.
Yes.
And of course, in the Republic India notes, you also have the Ashoka pillar with it. At somewhere, but it will be there either on the reverse or on the obverse, you will find it. So there were three denominations which were there, 5, 10, and 100. All three are there, and these are register prints.
And the register prints were used for what reason exactly?
Come again?
The register prints, they were used for what reason exactly? Is it to display design before the printing starts?
Yes, these are actually register prints are printed exactly the way it is from the same plate, but without the color one. These are black and white. Of course, this is also register print, but this JB Taylor note was issued. So also the 10,000, but these are also register print, but available for viewing at the museum. This is very interesting, Mahatma Gandhi note.
Yes.
Because the 1 rupee is signed by the Secretary of Finance. Here you will find a signatory as Narhari Rao. These were contemplated, but then not issued. Then I think there was a lot of controversy whether Mahatma Gandhi should be there or Dr. Ambedkar should be there.
Okay.
To avoid all controversy, they removed the portrait and used the Ashoka pillar, which was there for many years. Mahatma Gandhi first appeared on an Indian paper money on his when we had his centenary. They issued a commemorative note, and he was there on the reverse. It's only in 1987 in the 500 rupees when Mahatma Gandhi's portrait was first seen on the face of the note, and from then to now, we have him on every single note. It hasn't changed. So there were two notes contemplated. Maybe all denominations were, but what's recorded is only 1 and 5. We discussed about this earlier in the beginning of our conversation. The Gulf the Gulf and the Hajj. And if you see in the Gulf, it is at 100 rupees payable at the office of issue at Bombay.
At Bombay, yes.
And same is the case with the Hajj notes. And these remain. Hajj was a different story. It wasn't because of what I told you of people taking this money, buying gold, bringing it and coming back. In the case of Hajj, what they did was they were given money to take for pilgrimage. They would take more than what was given.
Okay.
Go there and change it to pounds. Bring the pounds back to India and sell them at 20% more. Because they didn't have a foreign exchange link in those days. 1959, I think the Saudi Riyal got linked to the pound, and then if somebody did what they did in 1958 or 59, instead of making money, they lost money because their money had to go through two exchanges: the rupee becoming Riyal and the Riyal becoming a pound. By the time you come back, you got less money than what you would have got otherwise. So this lasted only for 1 year, and so did the maybe the Gulf money was used till the 60s, but Hajj was only one issue in 1 year. We spoke of Mahatma Gandhi. We had only one commemorative issue. The commemorative issue happened in 1969. The reason why I brought this was that this is what you see at the back of the note. This is Mahatma Gandhi sitting at the Sabarmati Ashram. And this was designed by a gentleman, an artist called Subhakrishna.
Okay.
He was somewhere close to Bangalore. Just very recently, I think maybe 3 months before the museum opened, that I came to know that such a person existed, and it took me there. And finally, he isn't alive, but his children were there, and they gave. There was a competition in 1968 by the Reserve Bank that anyone who could give the vignette for this, there was a prize. So he gave his entries, and this was one of his entry which got featured in the note.
Right.
And the original paintings are there now at the museum.
Very beautiful portrait. I can clearly see why it won the competition. Very nice. This is the Hyderabad handmade essay by Delaru. When Nizam of Hyderabad contemplated in making their money, there were two printing houses that competed. One was Delaru and one was Bradbury Wilkinson. This was the design that was submitted by Delaru, and these are hand-painted essays. Only thing is that we don't know what in the obverse in this picture. We can see the coconut trees. We have the boat, and we can see a structure. We don't know what temple and where it's located. This hunt is on. It's somewhere in India, but we need to find it. Hopefully someone who's looking at the video will tell us.
Yeah, we'll see it. This is the temple in Warangal in Andhra. The river. So just now, I think today I was thinking that even this could be in Warangal, somewhere in the same vicinity. They wouldn't select two different monuments of two different locations. This again is the 1,000 rupee Hyderabad, but this is a Bradbury Wilkinson. The interesting part of this is that it has Charminar. That is one of those landmarks of Hyderabad city. Why they removed this from the note is not known. It is the same. The note looks the same. If you see Hyderabad 1000, without the vignette or the Charminar in the middle. This is also.
It looks so impressive, the note. The design is so impressive to me. And it has to be a big size, I would imagine, as the normally issued note is a big size note.
It is big size.
It is
But the
big.
reason why they took it off is a mystery. And he should have printed the note without that. This had some character also. Anyway, I want to tell you a story about these notes. These are Portuguese India, the first issue of the 1906 series under the Banco Nacional Ultramarino. They're very pretty to look at as well. And
Yeah.
to see a issued note in A, this condition, B, without any holes, and completely signed by whoever is amazing. But if you look closely, all these notes have serial number 00001. All four are 001. So obviously, when they were issued, the first note was taken out and kept with someone, and they've surfaced 100 years later.
Wow.
So someone did send me a mail saying that I have these notes which I wish to sell, and I didn't sleep for 3 days when I saw these. But I wasn't sure whether the guy was real or whether these were fake. But prima facie, they looked all right. Unfortunately, the gentleman who had these never spoke English. He spoke Portuguese, so I had to get some friend who lived in Bangalore to converse with him. And then we did a background check of this gentleman and found out that he's an honest man and not one of those. And prima facie, when you see the notes, and I asked him to send him reverse, hold it in his hand and send me. So it's not a Photoshop. So to prove that he had these in his possession. But even getting this was a nice story because we had an architect we got a golf course in Bangalore, which was under construction in those days, and the architect was from UK. And he happened to be in Bangalore when this discussion was going on. And I happened to tell him that, I might need to go to Portugal to Lisbon. He said, for what? I need to pick up something that I really want. So he said, you don't need to do that. I'm very fond of sailing and my yacht is going there next week. Unfortunately, it's not going to Lisbon, but to Porto.
Mhm.
If your friend can come and hand these over, I'll be happy to bring it when I come next trip. So we again had to get a gentleman who could speak Portuguese, convey to him. And then he went from Lisbon to Porto, handed over. He reached the place. He got onto the boat. We were on call. We took photos again to show that these were what we had seen in the email. And then finally, they were handed on a yacht in Porto, and then they came to Bangalore.
Wow, what an amazing story. I do still get that feeling as well. And I'm very glad you are getting that feeling. When you see something really excited, you cannot fall asleep. I have the same feeling. It's wonderful.
It is, isn't it so fantastic to see something like this?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing the main pieces, or hopefully main. I'm sure you have many more pieces in the museum.
No, I have, and I chose only these many. And before and I just want to play play 2 minutes of the video of the museum.
and the last slide almost makes it irrelevant, but do you still find exciting pieces, exciting things to look for?
See, as a collector, no, you do find something new does come up, something new excites you, something you see doesn't let you sleep for a few days. There's always something more, something that you say you wanted somehow. In collection, nothing is complete. Nothing is complete. There's always something that keeps propping up.
That is great.
Because something that is 200 years old, something that is not documented, recorded, either some new signature, new type, something does come up.
Always. That is great. And well, thank you so much for sharing everything and for your generous time in showing the images and explaining. I'm sure people can find the link, and I'll include it in the video, to your museum, and I'll include your general profile and in your biography, which is great. Thank you so much for talking with you, and it was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Arnas. See you. Have a nice weekend. Huh?
Thank you, Rezwan. You too. Take care and all the best.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.